Thank, thank you for the time to giving for us group 5 to explain about experiential language teaching and national functional approaches. And the first method, experiential language teaching, will be explained by Priska Rambubur Payangu, it's me, and the second method, national functional approaches, will be explained by Foni Ninef. The first method, experiential language teaching. We can see in the book of Deborah L. Norlat, English skill level, advanced, beginning to advanced, and grade level, elementary to adult. The background of experiential language teaching is experiential language teaching, or ELT, initially grew out of educational and psychological theories proposing that a subject is learner-based if students are involved in concrete, hands-on experiences with the subject. And the American educator John Dewey was one advocate of the method. He believes is that students will learn better if they use the language as opposed to being passive receptors or artificial language. The strategy of experiential language teaching is ELTS main strategy is to have students be involved in doing. For example, realia, show and tell, games, and videos are examples of teacher-prompted ELT activities. The strategy of experiential language teaching has six strategies. There are: the teacher identifies a task or activity that will help students learn the language needed in their particular context, and the teacher plans how the task should be implemented, including any necessary language items that may need to be introduced or reviewed for the student to perform the task activity, and the teacher explains the text to the student. The student discuss the tasks and identify their roles. The teacher do their task or activity. The student perform or demonstrate what they have learned or accomplished. The example and application of experiential language teaching is: if a student needs to know how to do a job interview in English, the following activities might be executed. The student does an exercise in which he or she is asked to comprehend questions with question words such as what, where, how, who, when, and so on. The student listens to examples of job interviews, and the student and teacher analyze the grammar, vocabulary, and discourse of the interviews. The teacher or the student, or both together, create the dialogue for their own interview. And the last is the student practice and then role play interviews. And the strength of experiential language teaching method is students are involved in actually using the language in authentic situation. And the weakness and modification from this method is experiential activities must be carefully checked out with their goals and pedagogical purpose. Keep in mind our experiential activities may end up having little or no education value. This is the material about experiential language teaching, and the next material about national functional approach will be explained by Foni Ninef. Thank you.
My name is Munir. Now I will explain about the topic is national functional approach. The first is background. The Council of Europe developed this approach in the 19th-17th century served as a paradigm for language teaching in Europe. In this model, the context of what should be taught focus on nation and function as to a grammar beside curriculum. Nation are contact areas such as shopping, health, travel, personal identification, and so on. Functional are how we use language such as expressing opinion, asking for advice, apologizing, and so on. The second is strategy. The following format is often used: the dialogue focusing on certain functional emotion and presented. Students practice the dialogue with classmates. Students may create their own dialogue for role playing. Students may reinforce using joke segment in which they choose or will oppose and words word in right dialogue. Students may expand on the previous tasks by going into the community and practicing real life dialogue. The third strength, pragmatic, authentic use of dialogue is emphasized. The approach helps students to understand different registers of language. For weakness, the approach can be too limited with little focus on academic or personal needs and skill. Thank you.